Hello, and welcome back to another coffee conversation. I am so excited. I love these because I feel like I always get a visual of the whole Reiki Cafe community just sitting in this collective living room with our coffee mugs and just chatting. And I love these coffee conversations. So, hello, if you are here with us live, or hello, if you are listening to this in the future on our podcast. And it's just so lovely to be with you all. I would love to know, leave me a comment in the chat that you can see me, you can hear me, of course, but also where you're watching from, what you're drinking, all of those things. I'll let people kind of start to find their way over to the live stream. I do look a bit blurry today, so let me see if I can fix that. We've got some pretty good storms happening where I am right now. And so my connection might not be the best, but we'll take what we can get, right? Oh, green tea. Oh, I love it. What do I have in here? I have passion fruit and hibiscus tea today in my cup this morning. So that's exciting. Let's see. Make sure I close everything that could possibly be taking up bandwidth on my computer, so that I can just focus on all. Okay, here we go. Hopefully I'm not too fuzzy, but if I start breaking up, just let me know in the comments because I don't want you guys to miss anything today. I am really excited for today's conversation in particular because we've done in the past a few different podcasts, a few different webinars and things on manifesting and on what it really looks like to manifest as a Reiki practitioner, right? And so when we're talking about this, it's this really interesting space to walk of being in this spiritual place, being in this connectedness with all that is, and also having all these questions about how do I manifest? And so says you should manifest this way. And I've heard that you can manifest like this. And I've tried this thing and it didn't work, and all of these things. And so I'm really excited for today's conversation because in those previous podcasts and webinars, we've really covered a lot of the basics of manifesting, of what it is, the best practices, how limiting beliefs tie in, self-worth, all that good stuff. So we have a lot of resources on that. And so as I was preparing for today's talk, I actually took notes, which, if you know me, is very rare. I am almost always flying off the cuff in these talks. And so today I actually took notes because I want to focus on what's below the surface when we're talking about manifesting, right? I think there's an abundance of information available right now on what manifesting is and how you can do it in law of attraction and all of these things. But being a spiritual practitioner, being someone who's been in this space for quite a while, I have found that there is this almost like underground connection of manifesting that rarely gets talked about. And so that's really what I want to dive into today. But first, I want to say hi to everyone in the comments. Oh, your cup is identical to mine. So exciting. I love this cup. It makes me so happy every day that I'm here. If you've seen any of my lives in the Facebook group recently, you'll know that I'm staying at my parents' house for the month until I start my round the world travels. And the other day I came downstairs and my dad, who is not woo-woo in the slightest, like at all, no inclination, is drinking out of this cup. And I was like, you got yourself a good cup of Reiki there. And he was very, very nonchalant about it, but I don't think he realized this was the cup he picked up. It tickled me though. So beautiful. From Southern Vermont, Brighton, beautiful. I love it. Okay, so as you're coming in, definitely let us know in the chat where you are, what you're drinking from, if you have your Reiki Cafe University mug. And like I said, you'll have to excuse the fuzziness of today's video. We've got some pretty high storms where I am, so we're doing our best with technology today, but this is what we got. So with that being said, I do just want to just dive right in and start with a question for you all who are listening, of really taking a moment to think about, what does manifesting mean to you, right? If you've listened to one of our podcasts, or if you've listened to me talk for any length of time, you'll know that I really value starting with a definition of whatever it is we're talking about, because it's really hard to have a conversation, have a constructive connection with a certain topic until we know what it is we're actually talking about, right? So whether this is what you define Reiki as, or how you define yourself, or in this case, how you define manifesting, it's really important to start with that solid foundation. So let me know in the comments, whichever side they're on, what your current definition of manifesting is. And we'll check back in at the end of this conversation and see if that definition is still the same. But to start out with today's talk, I do want to just create that solid foundation for what manifesting is, so that we have this really solid place to move forward from. And so when we're talking about manifesting, what are we really talking about, right? We're talking about taking something from the non-physical, whether it's an idea or a vision or an energy, and bringing it forward into this tangible 3D reality, right? It's the process of taking energy and making it something physical. And so another way that you can think of manifestation is it's a certain kind of alchemy, right? Because we're taking something that is in one pure state of energy and bringing it into another pure state of being physical or matter, right? Bringing it into this physical world. And so when we're talking about manifesting, a lot of people kind of end the conversation when we start talking about manifesting our dream job or our dream home or our vacation time or the perfect partner or these kind of big things that we like to talk about manifesting, right? But when we really break manifesting down and we bring it back to this core definition that we're working from, we can understand that we are constantly manifesting, right? The act of me speaking right now is an act of manifestation, because I'm taking these ideas, I'm taking these thoughts from an energetic, untangible form, bringing them down into the physical reality and sharing them with you all through my words. And so even just speaking is in itself an act of manifesting, right? Writing something down, even if it's not a novel, right? But even just writing down your own thoughts is an act of manifesting, because you're taking an energetic thought, an energetic idea, and you're bringing it into the physical reality onto your paper. And so this is really where I think that first misconception about manifesting occurs, right? Is we think that manifesting is this special thing reserved for these big ticket items that we want to bring into our life, right? We think that it's something that we interact with when we want to pull in our vacation or call in our perfect partner or get our perfect job. We reserve it for these big picture ideas, when in fact manifestation is just a part of life. It is a natural state of being alive, because we are both spiritual and human. Our very life is an act of manifestation. Everything we do is at some level an act of manifestation, whether that manifestation is having the thought, I'm hungry, and then going and making yourself food. That is an act of manifestation, even if it's not the magical, blow you away type of manifestation that we often think of when we have these conversations. And so that's kind of step one in learning how to manifest better as a Reiki practitioner, is looking at, how am I defining and using manifestation in my own life? Am I defining it as something that is just reserved for these big magical moments, right? Or am I viewing it as something that is constantly moving through my life? Am I viewing it as an act of creation of sorts, something that is inherent in my interaction with the world around me? Because when we can take it from being this big to do and realize that it's something that we're doing constantly in every single action, every single word, every single thought, every single thing that we do is at some level of manifestation, suddenly it takes the pressure away from our minds of saying, okay, I have this dream job. Now we have to figure out how we're going to get it, right? That's a lot of pressure to put on the mind. That's a lot of shoulds, a lot of potential that is now resting on this part of yourself that doesn't really know what it's doing, right? And so when we can, instead of making it this big deal, bring it to the level of just day-to-day human life, suddenly manifesting becomes so much easier to grasp and to relate to, because it's not something that's just reserved for really lucky people or people who were already wealthy or people who, are so spiritually connected that they never have any problems, right? Suddenly manifesting is something that is constantly happening, whether we're consciously choosing to manifest or not, right? And so that's step number one in manifesting better as a Reiki practitioner, is realizing that just like Reiki isn't just a practice, it's an experience. It's not something that just stays in the Reiki room, but Reiki is flowing through you always. Reiki can be seen as kind of the catalyst for manifestation, because again, what do we do as Reiki practitioners? We channel energy from the non-physical into the physical. So practicing Reiki is, in a way, itself an act of manifestation. And so when we can kind of link these two in our mind, we can see that there's really no break between manifesting and not manifesting, right? But then we come to this state of, okay, well, that's great. If everything I'm doing is manifesting, then why don't I have my dream job? Why don't I have the car that I want? Why don't I have all the free time I want for vacation? And this is where I find it fascinating to break manifesting down into these two spaces of manifesting from our minds and manifesting from our souls, or from our Reiki centers, or from our inner God, goddess, or from our higher self, whatever you want to call it, right? When we're thinking about these two different ways of manifesting, it helps us understand why sometimes either it's really, really difficult to manifest, or when we manifest something, we end up feeling not satisfied with it, versus when something flows so easily and we weren't even consciously aware that we were manifesting it until it's already here, right? So let's start with manifesting from the mind, okay? And here's where it's really important to, once again, define what it is we're talking about. So in the context of this conversation, we're going to be talking about the mind as this human aspect of ourselves. Some people call it ego. I choose to call it mind, but mind is this space where all of our questions occur. The mind does not have the potential to answer questions or to create something new. It has the potential to grab information from the past and project it into the future as a way of coming up with an answer. But the mind can't really come up with new data, right? I kind of think of the mind as an Excel spreadsheet. It can do amazing things with the data that you have put into it, but it can't make new data unless it's using a formula with the data from the past, okay? And so this is really our human mind. It's that part of our human selves that asks the questions, that identifies the problems, that tries to keep us safe, right? And so when we're manifesting from the mind, what we're really doing is we're saying, where is the problem in my life? What is missing from my life currently? And what do I think would fix that problem? Which sounds like a great equation, right? Identify a lack, identify a solution, and boom, you're happy. That's the way that the mind thinks life works. But the problem is that every solution that your mind identifies for a proposed problem in your life is just going to be pulled in from something it's seen from the past, whether that's something you've already experienced in your own life, or it's something that you've seen someone else experience in their life that your mind thinks made that person happy. And so therefore, wouldn't it make you happy too? Right? And so our mind has this kind of fundamental logical flaw in it, in that what it thinks is going to help us is more of what we've already experienced. And if that were true, right, if the answer to our happiness, to our fulfillment, to our joy, to our whatever, was what we already had, then we wouldn't be looking for happiness, fulfillment, joy, etc. We would already be there. It wouldn't be a question. And so our mind is kind of built on this flawed logic of manifesting, of yes, absolutely, identify the problem, think of a solution, and then go take action. But the problem is that the mind cannot come up with a new solution. It can't come up with a solution that's actually going to fill the hole, because if it could, the hole wouldn't be there, right? So the mind is taking these answers, taking these ideas from your state of being that you've been in for the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years with this hole that it's identified. And so any answers that it comes up with are going to carry that hole with it, are going to carry that problem with it, even if it thinks it's trying to fix it, right? And so this is where we can think of people who have become millionaires and get to the other side and think, I feel the same. People who have, I was one of these people when I was younger, had eating disorders, worked really, really, really hard to change their physical appearance, gotten to the other side of what they thought their physical appearance should be in order to be happy, and realized that their appearance had nothing to do with their happiness at all. Right. And so I'm not saying that manifesting from the mind is impossible. What I'm saying is that 9 times out of 10, manifesting from the mind is unfulfilling. It's dissatisfying, because what it's doing is it's giving us something to work towards. It's giving us this problem to solve, which the mind loves. It's giving us this goal, this vision for our life that we can use to work toward. But when we finally get that vision, when we finally get that goal, when we finally manifest that thing, we're left once again with that same lack that we started with at the beginning, because the mind doesn't have the tools to fill it. It has the mind has the tools to help us avoid it, to help us ignore it, to help us pretend that it's not there, to put a Band-Aid on top. But it doesn't have the capacity to actually fill the hole. And this is why we see so many people who become famous or become rich or find who they think the partner of their dreams is, or get their dream job only to feel dissatisfied 3 months down the road. And of course, there are so many psychological reasons for this, right? There's a lot of psychology that goes into that process that we won't go into today. But essentially, it's about understanding that when we manifest from the mind, it equals a lot of work. It equals a lot of 10-step plans of you're going to do this and then this and then this and then this, and then you'll get what you want. And it involves about 3 months after you get what you want, this feeling of dissatisfaction, right? So keep that in the back of your mind, that that's how we can tell that we're manifesting from our minds. Now, when we manifest from our souls, from our Reiki center, from our higher self, from our whatever you choose to call it, that place within us that is connected to the divine, that is part of all that is. When we manifest from this place, what are we doing, right? And so when I'm talking about soul, when I'm talking about your inner self, your higher self, what I'm really talking about is that part of you that resonates with the truth of all that is, whether you choose to call that God or source or universe or whatever term resonates most for you, right? That place within us that resonates at that truth, that resonates at that love, that resonates at the level of all that is, and therefore has all of the answers, right? I think every single one of us can remember a time where we've had a really strong gut feeling and it turned out to be right, or we had a really strong gut feeling, didn't follow it, and wish we had later on. And this is because within us, we have this internal compass, we have this internal GPS system, we have this intuition that's going to tell us exactly where we need to go from a place of higher understanding. And this is where the mind and the soul differ, right? Is the mind's going to come up with solutions based on what it's seen in the past. The soul is going to come up with solutions, or the intuition is going to come up with solutions based on its connection to all that is. In other words, based on its connection to every answer that is possible in the entire universe, and its connection to you as a unique being living out a unique life. Meaning that it's not looking at the past for answers. It's not looking at what has been done for answers. It's looking at what is the best and highest good for this person for answers, right? Just like Reiki, right? When we let our intuitions guide our Reiki sessions, we often find that they feel more powerful, more healing, more connected, because we're not trying to use our mind to diagnose the situation and use our Excel spreadsheet to get the correct output. We're using our soul to guide the situation beyond what our mind can perceive and guide us to the best and highest outcome for all involved, right? And this is where we once again connect manifesting back to Reiki, because we can think about Reiki as that catalyst for manifesting. Because what is Reiki? Reiki is that universal loving energy. And so when we connect to that, when we find the Reiki within us and we connect with it and we allow it to guide us, it's going to show us these opportunities, these visions, these goals, these answers that our mind never could have come up with, because our soul is not weighed down by the past. Our soul is not tied to what has happened. Our soul exists in the freedom of every potential that possibly could happen, right? And so this is why manifesting from the soul takes on a completely different tone. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But while we have this definition fresh in our mind, I want to highlight this here, okay? Because so much of content out there right now that is related to manifesting is geared toward manifesting from the mind. It's geared toward the mind saying, I am not happy. Here's what I think is going to make me happy. How can I make that happen? There's a lot of making and forcing and pushing and pulling the universe to do what you want. And you can do that, right? There are a lot of stories of people who have manifested that way. But once again, we come back to this understanding that at a certain point, those things that we manifest from that space of mind, what we manifest from the space of a problem, from the energy of a problem, is going to become at some point a problem, right? One of my favorite quotes of all time is by Albert Einstein. And he said, a problem cannot be solved at the same level of consciousness at which it was created. And so if our mind exists at the level of the question or at the level of the problem, and it's trying to fix that problem by staying in itself, it can't, because it's staying at the same level of consciousness. So a problem fixed by the mind is just going to become a problem again at some point, because that's what the mind is built to do. It's meant to keep us in question mode, in problem mode, so it can keep us safe. Whereas if we turn to manifesting with the universe, manifesting with God, with source, with whatever you choose to call it, this is where true manifesting occurs. And it occurs here for multiple reasons, okay? So the first reason is, of course, no matter what spiritual background you are from, you most likely carry this belief that everything happens for a reason, or that we have a soul contract, or that there's a divine path for us, or whatever it is, some kind of belief about the purpose of your life, about being here for a reason. And if this is true, and I believe that it is, and probably many of you watching or listening believe it too, if this is true, then that means that there has to be a, again, best and highest path for us to fulfill that purpose, for us to reach where we're supposed to reach, for us to do what we're meant to do, however you choose to frame it, right? And so, again, it's not going to be our mind that understands the best and highest way to get what we want, or to do what we're here to do, or to fulfill our purpose, because the mind is focused on the past. Well, we haven't fulfilled our purpose in the past, right? Our purpose is in the future and in living and growing and continuing on. And so what we have to do is we then have to connect to the part of ourselves that exists beyond the problem, beyond the question of, well, what is my purpose? We have to connect to the place within us that already knows what our purpose is, beyond the rationale, beyond the logic of the mind. And that place within us is that Reiki within, is that higher self, is that soul, is that piece of God within you. And when you can connect to that space, that's where suddenly you get this inner knowing of what you're meant to do next, what you're meant to say next, who you're meant to talk to, what you're meant to do, where you're meant to go. And often these goals don't look like what the mind wants us to do, right? I don't know how many times I've heard a story from someone who's gone on this amazing spiritual path, and they've said, if I had told myself 5 years ago what I was going to do over the next 5 years, I never would have done it, because the mind would have been scared, or it wouldn't have liked it, or it would have thought that I would be miserable, or all of these things. And yet it was exactly what I was meant to be doing. And so this is space number 2 that we have to step into in order to understand how to manifest better as a Reiki practitioner, is we have to recognize that our mind doesn't have the answer. That what our mind thinks it wants, that what our mind thinks will make us happy, is 9 times out of 10 not actually what it wants, and not actually going to make us happy, because the mind is, again, designed to keep us in our comfort zone. It's designed to keep us safe. And if that safe space, if that comfort zone were going to make us happy, we wouldn't even be here. You wouldn't be listening to this talk. You wouldn't be questioning, how can I be happier, more fulfilled, more joyful, more whatever, right? And so we have to stop thinking that the goals that our mind comes up with are necessarily the best and highest goals for us, or the visions that our mind has for our life are the goals and visions that our soul has for our life, right? And this is an interesting space to walk, because every now and then our mind's goals and our soul's goals align, right? And this is what we call alignment, when our human self and our spiritual self are on the same page. They have the same goal, they have the same vision, they are aligned to doing what it is they want to do. what it is they want to bring into this lifetime. That's alignment. But what happens is we start to lean more toward the mind. We start to focus on these goals and dreams that maybe fit into society's expectations for us, that maybe we've seen someone else do and thought, hey, that's really cool. Maybe I could do that too. We start to, again, pull information from the past and project it into the future, which is just going to leave us dissatisfied. And so when we start thinking about, again, acknowledging that manifesting, step one, like we talked about earlier, is something that happens every day with every breath, every word, every thought. And then step two, we start to understand that what the mind wants is not necessarily what we, the greater we, the spiritual we, wants or knows is in our best and highest interest. This frees us to understand that manifesting does not have to be a special occasion. It can be, but it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be work. It doesn't have to be reserved for those big things, or conversely, those little things that you feel like you're worthy enough to have, right? Manifesting is a constant daily act of being alive. And two, it frees us from the idea that every thought our mind has, every goal our mind has is what we're meant to do. It frees us to get curious about what is actually going to fulfill me, what's actually going to make me happy, what's actually going to serve myself and the world around me, everyone involved, in the best and highest way. And this is what manifesting from the soul does, because again, connecting with the soul connects us with that part of ourselves that has all the answers, that knows where we're meant to go and what we're meant to do. And so when we connect to that place, when we use that space to give us the ideas, goals, visions that we want to manifest, we can rest easy knowing that those goals, dreams, and manifestations are coming directly from God, universe, source, Reiki, again, whatever you choose to call it here, right? They're coming from that space within us that is connected to all that is that pure loving energy, that is the answer, okay? And so, for example, the difference between manifesting from the mind and manifesting from the soul might look like, and I have a great example of this in my life right now. Of last year, I went to Alaska in October and again in December, and I absolutely fell in love with it. If you've ever been to Alaska, I'm sure you understand it's stunning. And my mind said, oh my gosh, I love it here. I've always wanted to travel. I'm going to move here. Okay, my mind said, I'm going to move to Alaska next year and set out on a quest to find the house, to find the stuff, to find the perfect opportunity so that I could move to Alaska. I ended up finding somebody who had a house that was available that I could rent. And I talked with them and it was all going great. And I was about to sign the lease when they messaged me and they were like, hey, you know what? We actually can't let you rent for an entire year because we'll make more money leaving it as an Airbnb for tourists during the summer. And I was like, hey, okay, you know what? That's okay. And I have learned to see those moments where something is going so beautifully well and there's a detour. I've learned to call those moments the universe saving me from myself. Because often what happens in those moments, I have noticed, is that I am trying to pull something into reality from my mind. I have mentally decided, the human part of me has decided that, yes, this is what I'm meant to do. And I try and make it happen. Again, kind of that push and pull tug with the universe. I'm trying to make it happen. And eventually the universe will let you go along with it until it realizes that you're no longer listening to that inner compass, to that intuition. And it says, okay, time to save her from her mind and reroute her to what's truly going to be in her best and highest good. And so I took a step back and I was like, okay, thank you. Again, offering that gratitude. We've talked about that in the past, about how gratitude is a big part of manifesting. Thank you, universe, for saving me from myself. Show me what is truly meant to happen, what's truly for the best and highest good. And so a week later, I was driving along and I kept getting this thought of, I wonder if they would let me rent that house for 4 months, just a shorter length of time. Actually, I think I even just said 2 months. I kept getting the nudge of ask if you can rent from September and October and just see what happens. And so I was like, okay, I'm trusting. And I sent the person a message. It's like, hey, can I rent the house just from September to October so that I can be there for an extended length of time, but not a year? Okay. And the woman messages me back and she's like, let me talk with my husband. We'll see what we can do. She comes back and she says, hey, you know what? We can actually let you rent it from August through May, which was almost the same length of time that I was wanting to do it at the beginning. And I realized in that moment that what had happened was the universe, yes, wanted me to go to Alaska. That part was a soul and mind alignment of knowing that I, the entirety of my being, want to and am meant to go to Alaska. So that part was in alignment. Then my mind took over and said, no, we're not just going to go to Alaska. We're going to go to Alaska for an entire year. Okay. And this is where you can really tell the mind is coming in when you start to take things to extremes of not just this, but also this. Okay. So my mind said, no, not just going to go to Alaska. We're going to go for a year. And my soul was like, do we have to go for a year? And eventually that felt out of alignment and my manifestation stopped. But when I was able to come back to this space of connection, when I was able to bring my mind and my soul back in sync, that's when I got the intuitional nudge of just stay for a couple of months. And since I've made that decision and connected with her, not only have I found a house, but I also found a car. I've had some amazing opportunities come up because what's happening is I'm manifesting from this place where my mind and my soul are aligned. Does it mean that when I rented the house for 3 months instead of 6, that my mind was happy? Not necessarily. My mind was kind of upset that it wasn't going to get to move to Alaska. But the difference is that after so many years of manifesting and seeing the difference between what happens when you manifest from your mind and what happens when you manifest from your soul, I now understand that things happen so much more fully and in flow when I trust my soul more than I trust my mind. And so in that space where my mind wasn't happy, I again went back to step number 2 of understanding that my mind doesn't know everything. My soul does. And so who am I going to listen to? The part of me that's always in a question or problem mode, or the part of me that's always in a loving answer mode? And hands down, every time the loving answer mode, AKA my soul or intuition, is going to win. Yes, my mind might throw a hissy fit. Yes, my mind might think I'm making a stupid decision. Doesn't mean that those thoughts are true. Doesn't mean that I'm actually making a stupid decision or that I should be doing something else. No, all it means is that the mind's not happy. That's it. And that's what I'm talking about kind of disconnecting from our minds, and not in a way that is a death to the ego or is killing off our mind or these things that you hear about, because our minds are valuable tools, which we'll talk about in a second. But it's about understanding that what the mind wants is not necessarily what the greater we, or what I jokingly call the royal we, want, right? So recap really quick. Step 1, realizing that manifesting is an everyday activity. It's an inherent state of life. Step 2, realizing that what our mind wants and what our mind says are not necessarily true or right. Then we come into step 3 of, just like we were talking about earlier, about how when we manifest from the mind, we're starting from a problem and eventually ending with a problem. When we manifest from our soul, when we get that idea, that spark of inspiration, when we use our intuitions to manifest, we're manifesting from the space of an answer built in love, which will end up as an answer built in love, okay? And so the equation that we started with at the beginning of here's a problem, here's an answer, so I'm going to take action on it, the equation stays the same. What we fill it in with changes. We use our mind to identify the problem. We use our mind to identify where we are dissatisfied or stuck or frustrated, or what beliefs are being triggered, or what events from the past are keeping us held back, all of these things, right? We use our mind to identify a problem. But step 2, this middle part of the equation, is where things change, because we no longer use the mind to find the answer. We release the mind from the burden of having to figure it all out, because it can't. And so we let it go with compassion. We let it stay on the side of it has identified the problem. It's done its job. And then what do? Then we fill in this second part of the equation with our soul. We tune in, we go in deep, we connect with the Reiki within, with the peace of God within, and we listen. We listen for what is truly going to fulfill me. What is my true purpose in this lifetime? What am I truly meant to be doing? What vision am I meant to be calling in? Right? So we find the answer, yes, but we find it with our soul and not with our mind. And then the work that happens on the other side of that equation, this aligned action space, is what's really going to make the difference. Once we have identified the problem with the mind, we've identified the answer with the soul, we've sat in communion with ourselves, and we've come to understand that, oh, it's not a lake house that I'm meant to manifest, but it's a trip to Greece. Or, oh, it's not this perfect partner that I'm meant to manifest. It's the ability to love myself wholly and completely. Whatever it is that your soul has revealed to you is the true answer to the question you've been asking. This is where the real quote unquote work of manifesting happens. Because the truth is, you don't have to make anything happen. Okay, and this is where I'm going to bring in quantum physics because I love it. When we look at quantum physics, what we see is that everything in the universe exists in this infinite potential of waves. There are infinite wave potentials that make up everything on Earth. And we experience what we call the observer effect. And the observer effect is that when an experimenter, when a researcher is observing these infinite potentials, based on what he is expecting to happen, the infinite wave potentials collapse into one wave potential. And that is what the researcher sees or observes. So how does this translate to manifesting? Essentially, what this means is that there is in front of us, in the unknown of the future, an infinite number of potentials. There's an infinite number of things that could happen in the next second, minute, year, life. And depending on what we are expecting to see, depending on what we are focused on, those wave potentials are collapsing into the single potential that we are living out. Okay, so for example, at this moment, there are an infinite number of things that could be happening. My house could catch on fire. I could see a unicorn flying past my window. The sky could turn purple, or I could spill my water. Any number of infinite things could happen, far more than my mind can come up with, because again, my mind can only pull potentials from the past. But based on what I am expecting, which is that I'm going to continue to sit here and speak with you, those wave potentials are going to continue to collapse themselves to create the reality that we are now experiencing. Okay. And so this is where it gets really interesting, because when we're talking about what wave potentials or what possibilities we're expecting, there are a lot of layers here, because your soul, again, is operating from this space of infinite wisdom. Your soul has no expectations, but your soul has an infinity of knowledge and wisdom and understanding and answers, but it doesn't have shoulds or expectations the way the mind does. And so when we're talking about what wave potential we're going to bring into our life, we once again have to turn our focus to the mind, because the mind is our own limiting factor. Okay, the soul has no limits. It doesn't. It's our mind that places our limits on ourselves. And so on this third side of the equation, where we're taking this aligned action, we once again put the focus on the mind of saying, what limits am I imposing on myself? What is my mind expecting? Once again, knowing that it's going to expect more of whatever I've gotten in the past. And so this is where looking at things like, what are my limiting beliefs? What difficult experiences have I had in the past? What has the usual outcome of taking this action been? And am I expecting it to occur that way in the future? And we work to dismantle those limiting beliefs, to rewire our thoughts, to create spaces where our limits are more expanded so that we're leaving room for these manifestations to occur. And if you saw our most recent blog post over on Reiki Cafe University, you'll see this section where we talk about how fear is not a stop sign. And this is really important to talk about when we're talking about manifesting, because a lot of times what happens is we've identified the problem with the mind, we've identified the solution with the soul, we start to rework our limiting beliefs and our mindset and all the things, and we get ready to take aligned action, and we get what? We get scared. We get scared of taking the risk, taking the leap, asking for that person's phone number, making the financial investment in ourselves, taking that risk. We get scared But it's not the royal we that we talked about earlier. It's our mind. Our mind gets scared. And so this, once again, is where we go back to that second principle of understanding that our minds, what our minds think, isn't true. It's not a fact, it's a thought. It's a belief that our mind has. And so when we look at fear, what we're really looking at is a space where we are pushing up against our own limits, our own self-imposed limits that have been put on us by the mind, because again, our soul is limitless. None of our limits come from our soul. All of our limits come from our mind. And I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying we need to kill the ego. I'm saying that we can be aware of what are our limits currently. And just like we were talking about a moment ago, we can realize that it is those limits that stop us from manifesting the things that our soul has in store for us. It is those limits that collapse the infinite wave potentials of our lives into the one reality that we're currently experiencing. Okay? And so why is this important? Because when we get to this third step of aligned action and manifesting, and we get scared, we need to remember that that fear is not a stop sign. That fear is an example of where our current limit is. And we then have to play this game with ourselves of deciding which one we would rather have. Would we rather take the risk, expand our limit, and face the fear, deal with the emotion of fear? Or would we rather allow the fear to subside, keep our limit where they are, and not explore the potential of getting the thing that we're manifesting, of experiencing the life that we want to have? And this is one of those things where there is no wrong answer. And I think a lot of manifestation teachings miss this, is that we talk about how you have to expand your limits and you have to call in these things and you're worthy of the life of your dreams. And yes, you are worthy of the life of your dreams. You are worthy to expand your limits, to experience new things, to call in everything your soul has waiting for you. But you don't have to. There is no pressure on you to do these things. There is no pressure on you to live the life of your dreams. There is no pressure on you to manifest all of these things. It is a conscious choice. You can choose to face the fear, expand your limits, and experience that potential. Or you can choose to listen to the fear, keep your limits where they are, and not experience that potential. It's okay, no matter what you choose. But when we realize that it is a choice, we can take away the burden from manifesting, right? Which again, in and of itself, when we think of manifesting as a burden, is a limit, is going to hold us back from manifesting what we want, from connecting with our soul, because we believe we've chosen to set one of our personal limits on the fact that fear is a stop sign. That's a limit that we've created for ourselves, which is fine. But you could take the opportunity to expand that limit to the belief that fear is not a stop sign, which is going to open you up to new experiences, new manifestations, new connections with your soul, because you're not stopping yourself every time your mind says no. Because again, your mind exists in the level of the problem, not the level of the solution. And so we cultivate these conversations based on our mind. But when we're talking about how to manifest better as a Reiki practitioner, it all comes back down on a deeper level to these 3 or 4 things that we've talked about today, right? Of understanding first and foremost that manifesting is an inherent state of being alive. We are constantly manifesting or conversely performing alchemy, right? Step 2, understanding that what our mind says isn't actually always true. Our mind doesn't have the answers. And that's okay, but we have to acknowledge that. We have to stop expecting our mind to have the answer and realize that, just like Einstein said, we have to go to a different level of consciousness, aka we have to connect with our soul in order to solve the problems that our mind can perceive. Which takes us to point 3 of coming back to that manifesting equation of we identify the problem with the mind. We identify the solution with our soul, or what we want to manifest with our soul. And then on this other side of the equation, we take aligned action by working with the mind to expand our limits, to heal so that we aren't holding ourselves back, and to trust in our soul, in the divine power of the universe, of Reiki, of the deeper part of ourselves, to trust in those powers to bring forward what we want, to collapse those wave potentials to what's going to be for the best and highest good of ourselves and everyone that is involved, right? And then we come to step 4 of, again, understanding, first and foremost, that fear is not a stop sign unless you choose to allow it to be a stop sign. Understanding that everything is a choice. Those 4 things are really the key to understanding how to manifest better as a Reiki practitioner. Because where a lot of people get stuck, once again, is that they are holding on to manifesting from the mind. They're holding on to, well, my mind thinks that being thinner, that going on vacation, that switching jobs, that whatever is going to make me happy. Okay? When our soul is saying, learning to love yourself, going within, connecting with me is going to reveal all of these answers and give you that happiness, that fulfillment, that joy that you have been seeking. And so the answer to everything always is identify where the limits are in your mind, identify where you're holding yourself back, and do the work to heal those spaces, do the work to expand your limits, do the work to release those stuck points, to heal those traumas, to unravel those limiting beliefs. And then connect with your soul, go within, connect with yourself, and trust those intuitional nudges. Trust that little voice within you that says, just ask if you can rent it for 2 months instead of 6. Trust that little voice within you that says, hey, that person that you saw in the coffee shop, you're supposed to go talk to them. Trust that intuitional nudge that says to eat 3 walnuts today instead of 2, because even if your mind doesn't understand, there's a reason. And taking that aligned action, again, aligned in the fact that we're not allowing our minds to limit us and we're allowing our souls to guide us. That is what is truly going to allow you to manifest better as a Reiki practitioner, because instead of manifesting from the problem, manifesting from the question, manifesting from the places where we are limited, we are then manifesting from places within that are limitless, that are in a space of love, in a space of the answer, in a space of the truth, and what is in the best and highest interest for all involved, right? And so this is such a nuanced conversation. This is such a powerful conversation, because what's happening here is that we're giving you the framework for how to manifest better as a Reiki practitioner, but it's up to you to choose how you implement, if you implement that framework in your own life, right? I always tell students, it's like we give you the black and white coloring page, and it's up to you to color it in. It's up to you to choose how it's going to present itself in your life, what it's going to look like for you, what teachings or suggestions or wisdom you're going to take with you, and what you're going to let go, knowing that, once again, like we talked about at the end, everything is a choice. And we are constantly manifesting. And so can we choose to be conscious of the manifestations that we're calling in, and conscious of which aspect of ourselves we're allowing to do the heavy lifting? Are we creating that work and that tug and pull from our mind? Or are we creating limitless potentials that will collapse into the best and highest one for all involved by connecting with our soul? So I hope that you have enjoyed today's conversation. I know that I have. And I hope that if you have questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, you'll share them with us in the Reiki Cafe Community Facebook group, that you'll send us an email at admin@reikicafeuniversity.com, that you will send me a message on Facebook, or that you'll book a 15-minute call with myself or Christine just to chat, because we really do want to connect with you and hear about where have you been stuck in manifesting, where have you been getting frustrated, what feels like it's not working, and how can we get you into this space of flow and connection with yourself and your intuition. But with that said, I know we have 10 minutes until the end, and so I would love to hear from you guys here on YouTube what your comments are, what your questions are, what thoughts you have, what's been your aha moment from this conversation today. I would love to hear over in the chat. And while you're typing, I'm going to drink some more of my tea and read your wonderful comments that you left. Oh, I love that definition of manifesting, focusing one's energy to manifest one's desire for the greater good. I love it. Oh, yeah. And while you guys are doing your questions, let's check in again in the comments. Is your definition of manifesting the same as it was when we started this conversation, or has it changed? Again, there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just curious. Let me know in the comments. Hello to everyone who joined us late. It's lovely to see you. Any questions, comments, thoughts, top takeaways, any of the things from today's conversation? Struggling with getting people to practice on, became a Reiki practitioner in April and I'm feeling inflated. Okay, so on this note, great question. First of all, from a mind level, understand that summers are a notoriously slow time. There's a reason that we don't pitch anything in Reiki Cafe or launch any courses or do anything in the summer, because it's a notoriously slow time. No one's going to want to come in for healing when they could be on the beach, right? So part of it is that. The second part of it is going within and really taking an honest look at which part of you came up with the particular goal that you have, right? I'm going to assume, even though you didn't say in your comment, I'm going to assume that your mind has some kind of goal number for how many clients you should be having or how much money you should be making in these kinds of things, right? And so going within and taking an honest look at which part of yourself came up with those goals. And if it's your soul, fantastic, stick with it. However, if it comes to light that your mind has kind of taken over this manifestation, I always tell our students, a gift that was born from the soul should not be given to the mind for care. And what I mean by this is that I'm going to assume, Rachel, that Reiki found you, that Reiki called you, aka that your soul awakened you to the idea of Reiki in your life. And I'm also willing to bet that when somewhere in the transition, because we've all been here, right? This is said with the utmost compassion, that somewhere in the transition of the excitement of becoming a Reiki practitioner to the experience of becoming a Reiki business owner, that gift that was given to you from your soul, aka the presence of Reiki in your life, was handed over to your mind for care. In the act of switching from a practitioner to a business owner, I'm willing to guess that there was some kind of switch that was made, that your mind was allowed to predict how many clients we should have, how much money we should make, what this should look like, right? Not saying that it's totally, but, and so then we come back into this space of, okay, we've identified the problem right now, right? Which is that we're feeling dissatisfied with the number of clients, dissatisfied with how the business is going, just that sense of frustration or whatever emotion you're experiencing. And so then the answer is not to push harder, do more, keep pushing with the mind. The answer is to take a step back and drop that problem down into your soul and see what answers your soul or your intuition has for you. Not what you should be doing, not what other people are doing, not what other Reiki businesses look like, but what does your soul have in store for you? Whether it's the same as the goal your mind has set previously or something different, and reconnecting, kind of recalibrating that way. I always think about having almost, it's like I see in my mind's eye, my mind is a ball of light and my soul is a ball of light. And then there's like my awareness right in the middle. And I see these two wires connecting my mind to my awareness and my awareness to my soul. And when I'm feeling like it seems like you are, Rachel, that feeling of frustration or disconnect or discomfort or just something's not quite happening, I go within myself and I see which of those wires has become disconnected. Is my mind disconnected from my awareness, or is my awareness disconnected from my soul, or is it both? And can I bring those wires back into alignment? And typically when I go through that process of where are my mind and my soul disconnected and how can I reconnect them, suddenly all of the answers that I'm looking for are coming forward because I've stopped putting all of the pressure on my mind to figure things out. And I've reconnected those dots and created that flow of energy that's going to let those answers come to me rather than trying to find them with my mind. I'm allowing them to be revealed with my soul. Oh, Ross said, I'm going to start researching quantum physics. Oh, yes, please do. If you haven't yet, listen to, on the podcast, listen to What is Reiki? A Quantum Perspective of a Spiritual Healing Modality. And, what is it? The Energetics of Time, the one that Christine and I did together. I go pretty deep into some basic quantum physics jargon topics that correspond with healing in those two podcasts. So again, that's What is Reiki? A Quantum Perspective of a Spiritual Healing Modality, and the Energetics of Time with Christine and myself, the one that we did together. Those two are great places to start with quantum physics. And if you want book recommendations or other recommendations, or if you just want to chat about it, let me know, because I'm a huge quantum mechanics nerd and I think it's fascinating. So definitely be sure to share your aha moments because it's amazing. Beautiful. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, concerns from today? While you guys are thinking on that, I do just want to give a couple of updates just so you're aware of them. If you really enjoyed today's conversation and you're like, this is fantastic, but now I need to know how to connect with my intuition, how to connect with my soul, then coming up on July, I believe it is the 10th, next Monday. Let's see, is it actually the 10th? It is the 10th. Next Monday, July 10th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern, we have a How to Use Your Intuition workshop with me, where we're going to be going over a technique that you can actually use to give your mind, give your soul, give your intuition a voice that is just as strong as the voice of your mind. So definitely put that on your calendars. The recording will be available if you can't make it live, but I would highly recommend registering for the event to save your spot. Tonight in the Facebook group, the Reiki Cafe Community Facebook group, we do have a spiritual tools Q&A with Chantel from 6 to 7 p.m. Mountain or 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. So be sure to check that out. And if you are new to Reiki, coming up on Thursday, July 13th, we have a new to Reiki community event with myself and Chantel, specifically for people who are new to Reiki or who are looking to dive into a deeper connection with Reiki. If you're interested in working one-on-one with me, particularly around things like Reiki, connecting with your intuition, breaking through your limiting beliefs, all of those things, I do have a 3-month one-on-one creative Reiki mentorship coming up starting in September. We already have a few amazing people signed up, and I'm so excited to be working with you guys one-on-one. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, leave a comment or send me a message over on Facebook, and I can give you more details. But until then, thank you so very much for joining with me today, for taking time out of your morning to come into connection with me, but more importantly with yourself. And I'll see you next time at Reiki Cafe University. So much love.